Acum am fost lăsat. Ziua bună, dragii mei! Nu mă auzeați, vorbeam în gol, ca să zic așa. Mă bucur nespus că suntem iarăși împreună. Nu știu exact cât suntem acum împreună, dar o să ne spună Ioana. Ioana, cât suntem astăzi, all together?
Deocamdată suntem doar 50-60.
Cine se mai înscriu?
Cu siguranță vor mai intra.
Deci mai pierdem puțin timpul, ca să zic așa. Mai tragem de timp.
Hai să-i răsplătim pe cei care au intrat deja. I-anunț tu?
I-am răsplătit salutându-i și spunându-le bine ați venit la al 10-lea webinar și lista continuă. Astăzi va fi un moment absolut senzațional. Cei care îl cunoașteți pe Robert știți despre ce vorbesc. O oră jumate, 2 ore, depinde cât de repede vă plictisiți sau nu. Vom sta împreună cu Robert. Poveștile și povestea lui sunt absolut fabuloase, senzaționale. Îl văd și pe Felix, pe care îl salut și mă bucur să-l văd și să-l rog să spună și el două cuvinte aici.
Of course. Hi, Robert.
Hi, Felix.
I'm very glad to be here. Bună, dragilor. Și eu abia aștept să-l aud pe Robert. Am avut sâmbătă întâlnire cu el în cadrul conferinței și propria mea concluzie după conferință a fost ceva din ce a zis Robert, că nu e un moment mai bun decât acum în a face o revoluție a mentalităților. I don't know if you, Robert, you understood what I have said, but I just continue.
Yes, I got that. And the revolution begins.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for being with us.
Felix, cum au fost webinariile de până acum? Ai participat la destul de multe dintre ele, știi pe cei care au vorbit. Dacă ar fi așa, în 2 minute maxim, să tragi prime concluzii după primele 10, la nivel general.
La nivel general aș putea spune că acum așa foarte îți răspund ce îmi trece acum prin minte. Am văzut dorință foarte mare de adaptare și de învățare din partea profesorilor. Cumva asta ne-a și încurajat pe noi să găsim soluții în a invita cei mai buni oameni în România care să dea răspunsuri pe nevoile voastre. Fie că a fost vorba de lucruri care țin de tehnologie și adaptarea la tehnologie și am avut câteva webinarii în zona asta, fie că a fost vorba de echilibru emoțional, pentru că, da, toți am trecut prin stări altfel decât eram obișnuiți și am avut webinarii și din zona asta. Și o altă zonă, aș putea spune că a fost oare ce putem lua din această experiență și să folosim când ne întoarcem la școala offline. Oare cum va fi viața noastră după ce întoarcem la clasă? Pentru că am observat și părinții și profesorii în cele 2 studii pe care noi le-am făcut, cred că lucrurile nu vor mai fi la fel, că faptul că cu toți a trebuit să ne adaptăm și să gustăm cumva din învățământul online și digital și să vedem beneficiile lui, le vom folosi ulterior la clasă și așteptările sunt mai mari din partea celor care sunt beneficiari ai educației. Și încă un lucru care îmi vine în minte este că, și m-a bucurat foarte tare, respectiv că în studiu Vocea SuperTeach at Părinți, părinții au o părere bună și foarte bună în majoritatea lor față de felul în care profesorii s-au adaptat contextului din punct de vedere a învățării online. Adică efortul vostru, dragi profesori, cumva a fost văzut și înțeles de către părinți. Cel puțin acei aproape 4.000 de părinți care au răspuns la chestionarul nostru. Vor mai fi și excepții, așa este, nu e totul roz, dar eu cred că viața e făcută din lucrurile bune, din jumătatea plină a paharului pe care alegem să o vedem. Și asta cred că trebuie să vă dea curaj și stăruință în a merge mai departe pe direcția asta. Cam asta ar fi, să zicem, 4 gânduri care ies după cele 9 webinarii. Acum o să-l vedem pe al 10-lea, care sigur va fi unul provocator, așa cum îl știm noi pe Robert, în stilul de a provoca challenge the status quo. This is the expectation I have from you, Robert.
Mersi frumos, Felix. Sunetul de la tine nu e excepțional, dar te-am înțeles, te-am auzit. Sunt câteva chestiuni tehnice pe care eu aș putea să vi le spun, dar nu vi le spun eu. O să rog pe Ioana totuși să vi le transmită, nu de alta, dar poate mai e unul altul care nu știe cine e Ioana și cum arată Ioana. Ea este cea care organizează conferințele SuperTeach, și cele offline și cele online, așa că Ioana, zi-ne din punct de vedere tehnic, în afară de faptul că nu suntem pe Facebook astăzi, și o să ne spui câți s-au adunat în secunda asta pe platformă, spune-ne detaliile tehnice, te rog frumos.
Suntem 74 de participanți în acest moment. Marea majoritate sunt în secțiunea de attendee și vă invităm, Robert vă invită să fiți alături de el și să activăm camerele. Asta înseamnă că, așa cum am scris în chat, scrieți, răspundeți-ne acolo în chat că sunteți ok să activăm camerele și atunci veți fi alături de noi și vă vom vedea. Pe Robert îl ajută să vadă reacția oamenilor, așa cum ne ajută pe fiecare, pentru că e foarte greu să vorbești unui beculeț verde-roșu, fiecare cum îl are. În afară de acest lucru, da, nu suntem astăzi live pe Facebook, însă avem loc aici pentru toată lumea care dorește să-l urmărească live pe Robert. Avem și traducere simultană asigurată de Anca Antohi, pe ea o vedeți acolo doar cu numele, dar ea este cea care vă vorbește la telefon. Modul de activare al traducerii este același ca și la conferință, free conference call către Anca Antohi. Am să scriu aici în chat exact detaliile de conectare. Și în rest, haideți să ne bucurăm de încă un webinar interesant.
Mersi, Ioana. Aș mai adăuga eu că ne-am dorit ca interacțiunea cu Robert să se facă în limba engleză direct, nu prin traducere, pentru a fi mai operativ și mai face-to-face, ca să spun așa. Deci cei care intrați pe camere și vreți să interacționați, vă rugăm în măsura în care este posibil să folosiți limba engleză și nu traducerea din motive tehnice. Gata. Lumea nu a intrat aici să ne urmărească părlăvrăgerile noastre, ale celor din executiv, ca să zic așa. Sunt convins că s-au săturat de ele. Suntem la al 10-lea webinar. Nici nu o să pierd acum foarte mult timp să vi-l prezint pe Robert, pentru că sunt absolut convins că voi, cei care sunteți acum online, ați fost la conferințe și cei mai mulți dintre voi l-ați văzut live pe Robert. O să vă spun doar că spune despre el că nu i-a plăcut școala și din punctul ăsta de vedere a petrecut 36 de ani în educație. O bună parte din această perioadă a petrecut-o în România, a condus aici American International School of Bucharest și cu mare succes, o școală care a ajuns la un număr impresionant de elevi din extrem de multe țări, ceea ce mi se pare absolut senzațional. Dar Robert a fost și în Statele Unite și în Uzbekistan, a fost în 3 zone și timp de 36 de ani a făcut educație. Întotdeauna ne-a îndemnat să thinking out of the box și a fost cu noi de la prima ediție la București, a fost cu noi la ediția memorabilă de la Cluj, unde au venit 1300-1400 de profesori și lucruri pe care ni le spunea la Cluj, habar n-aveam noi că 6 luni mai târziu se întâmplă. Iată cum ar fi pregătirea pentru un viitor care fie deja a venit, fie habar n-avem cum arată. Cum îi pregătim pe copii pentru așa ceva? Sunt lucruri la care el s-a gândit, pentru că, și fără doar și poate așa este un tip vizionar. Acum, de ce nu-i place Facebook? Nu știu să vă explic exact, dar n-a avut în viața lui cont de Facebook și nici nu și-a dorit prezența astăzi pe Facebook, ca să fim clari. O avea ceva de a face cu viziunea, poate că ne spune Robert acest lucru. Eu o să vă țin pumnii să aveți o oră și jumătate, 2 de fun și de rebelism, da? Rebelismul nu are de a face cu rebele Romanian Business Leaders, ci cu faptul că întotdeauna Robert ne-a spus și mai ales vouă, profesorilor, să fiți rebeli. Mi-aduc eu aminte de o chestiune, acum nu știu dacă a spus-o el sau nu, zic și eu așa, sunt diplomat. Something like give a shit, da? Nu știu dacă a spus-o el, dar cam așa ceva am auzit-o la unele dintre conferințele noastre și am repetat-o eu de câteva ori. O să ne spună el dacă a fost autorul. Eu plătesc drepturi de autor, indiferent cine a spus acest lucru. Noi nu o să give a shit acum următoarele 90 de minute și o să vă las în compania lui Robert. Sunt convins că vă veți bucura de aceste minute. Robert, it was about you. Probably you understood some words. Some bad words also. I don't know where I've heard such a thing, but it doesn't matter. I said I didn't know exactly why you don't like Facebook, but maybe you can tell the people why not. Anyhow, it's your time. It's your time. And titlul prezentării lui e It's About Time. It's about time. Și o să vedeți ce înseamnă It's About Time. Now it's about your time, Robert. Enjoy the day with us. Thank you very much for being here with us. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Dragos. I made a few notes as you were talking. Facebook is absolutely wonderful and absolutely disgusting at the same time. So whilst I like the good bits, I hate the bad bits more. So I don't have a Facebook account. I have other accounts, but I fundamentally disagree with how Facebook is run. So anyway, leave that aside. Ironically, the phrase don't give a shit has haunted me for the last 4 or 5 years, because of course, not to give a shit means you do give a shit, if you excuse my English. But something else that Dragos mentioned was thinking out of the box, which is probably a good prelude to this next hour and a half or so, because I know that to think outside the box, you must understand what the box looks like that you're actually in. So today, it's about trying to analyze what does that box look like, and hopefully give you some ideas of how you might shape the size of that box. We're all going to live in a box, but the question is, what box are we going to live in? So the title was It's About Time, which in English has 2 meanings. The literal, it's about time, as in hours, days, weeks, months, years. But it also means in English, let's get started. It's about time we did something. A lot of schools have been trying to do things differently, particularly in the last 5 to 10 years, and technology has played a huge part in that. But as well as the technology, we have to start thinking differently. So not only are we going through an extraordinary period in our history with the coronavirus, I think that this episode of the last 2 months, and probably another 6 to 12 months to go, will reshape how we do things. So the time, I think, is now, and the timing is perfect to start thinking about how do we actually change the way we teach and how our children actually learn. I want to be very concrete. I'm not giving you any theory or very little theory, because it's an understanding of your box that I'm interested in, and we'll take summary, hopefully, of your input, which then we can send to you to give you a sense of what is the actual status quo look like. Because if you are to change the status quo, like your box, you must understand it. So today I'm going to concentrate on 3 things, and very basic things. I'm not talking about content or how you teach in terms of your subjects or anything like that. I'm not particularly interested at this point in time because there's a lot of content out there and the government to a certain extent dictates what you do. But I say to a certain extent. So I'm going to be asking you 3 sets of questions. One is broken down into 2 parts. Who is doing what? When are you doing it? And for how long are you doing it? And where are you doing it? If you wind back the clock 60, 70, 80 years ago, it was very simple. The who, the teacher, when at school, where at school. But things are changing and will change quite rapidly, and a lot of schools are changing. So how does the learning actually take place? What actually happens? And this photograph, I think a lot of you would recognize because it's, I think, quite typical a lot of Romanian schools that I've seen at my time in Bucharest. But this is changing, and it's changing quite rapidly. So the 4 sections I'm going to look at, 2 on the who, the student piece and the teacher piece. Then going into time, how do we actually use time? Not only our time, the teacher time, but also how do we use student time? And thirdly, how do we use space and place in how we teach and how the students learn? I think of those 4 items, I actually believe the last one, the where, has perhaps the most profound impact on how kids actually learn and where they actually learn it and the conditions under which they actually learn it. And I spend a lot of time in trying to design spaces in which people might learn and do learn, which are quite radically different from what perhaps most of you are actually used to. So on the student focus, and I know a lot of you will know about student-led learning and how we concentrate on the student rather than the focus on the teacher. So I'm going to ask you 6 questions. After each one, about 60 seconds for you to respond. I don't expect to be an exact science, but in the first question, how often, on average, in a week, over the course of a month, does your students lead the lesson? When do they actually control? Is this 10% of the time, none of the time, 20% of the time? And those are the sort of questions I'll be asking you as we go through this webinar. There's no right or wrong here. If it's 0, absolutely fine. If it's 100%, absolutely fine. That's not what this is about. This is to understand the shape of the box. Once you understand that data and can critique it, then you can start designing that particular shape and how you particularly operate within your professional duties. So the first question, how often in your classroom, not in your school, in your classroom, does the student lead the lesson? So just either do it through chat, or if some of you want to speak about it, fine. Give me a sense, give us a sense of how often do your students actually lead a lesson. Rarely. I have one here. Thank you, Mihaela.
I don't know how to do this.
Say that again, Alina.
Oh.
Oh, I thought you said something. 40% of the time. Thank you. Again, just put it out there. I have no idea who you are, Mihaela Parata, but I'm sure you're wonderful, and I need to know, and we need to know.
We have some other answers in the chat. I think you see them. 5%, 50%, 45%, pretty often, sometimes.
Perfect. Good. So we'll collect all these bits of data. I'm a very strong believer in the power of this qualitative data. And the research that I've done over the years, yes, there's lots of quantitative data, which is wonderful, but the voice of the teacher, I think, is the most powerful. Okay, question number 2. How often does your students pick the topic of learning? The students as the scholar, they decide within a framework what they're actually going to learn. So you might decide on teaching history, and it might be pre-Second World War Romanian history or the Dacian culture. How often are the students picking a segment of what you're trying to teach? In other words, how much control do they have over their particular content? You're going to have to work this afternoon. Sorry.
The first answer in the chat is never, but it's in Romanian.
Okay. Good. Interesting. I'm getting a sense that the younger they are, the more control they have. And as they get older, the less control, which is totally logical, by the way. Okay. How often do you think, again, over the course of a week, do you act as a facilitator and mentor rather than a more didactic sort of teaching from the front of the classroom, from the blackboard, whiteboard? How often do you actually wandering around the classroom, facilitating the student learning and really acting as a mentor rather than a teacher? Interesting. I think it's why I decided to do it this way is just interesting to see what teachers are coming up with. And if you're a teacher that doesn't do any mentoring or very little mentoring, then I'm here to push you, provoke you, prod you in saying, well, is that good or bad? And if you've never done it, try it. So we got, from 0, 10, 15% very often. This gives you all, I think, a sense of, okay, how can I change my teaching style based on some of these responses? Okay, peer learning. What I mean by that is where you might introduce a particular topic, concept, and the students themselves discuss what it might mean, what it means to them, as just either group or with their neighbor. In other words, they actually dissect the learning and put it back together, and then probably ask questions or clarification because of it.
I will ask the participants to answer on chat or to send the message on chat to all panelists or to all participants. Okay?
Oh yeah, good idea.
Atenție să vă setați chat-ul pe a trimite mesaje către toți participanții, toți paneliștii, da? Nu doar către unul dintre ei, pentru a fi vizibile de către toți.
Can I repeat it? Yeah, what I mean is how often when you're teaching, you stop, say to the students, okay, discuss it amongst yourselves to see if you actually understand what has just been said. All too often, the child will sit in the room and hasn't probably understood anything that's happened, often for the whole of the lesson, because they've missed some piece. So this allows the students together to teach each other. It takes the pressure off the individual. Good. Excellent. I'm timing your responses, so I presume we can keep all this chat. I'll send you the timing so you can break down the answers to each section. Okay. Would you say you are the children are active participants or passive participants in the learning process? Active means they're engaged, they're asking questions, they're talking to each other, they're prodding you. Passive means they're quite content to be quiet, sit reasonably still, and listen to what you have to say. By the way, both active and passive have their roles. But I'm just interested to know, would you say your students are more active participants or more passive participants? Some of them, of course, might be more active than you would actually like them to be. Okay, the last one is a bit trickier. A lot of you will have heard about that students learn in different ways, and most of you as teachers will know that implicitly in how you conduct your lessons. Kids just learn differently. But have you actually analyzed within your classroom with your students how they actually learn differently? It is also gender related. The boys learn differently from the girls. How active the students are plays a huge part. Some people like to stand rather than sit. Some people have to see rather than hear. So, as you know, there's different ways of learning. Do you actually understand, or do you know how to understand how your particular students learn, the best way for you to actually teach them? So this is a conscious effort on each child to work out, and you can ask them, you know, what do you actually need to allow the learning to happen? Interesting. lot of research coming out of Harvard University in the States on this, and there's some great books. Go online to read about it. It's a fascinating topic. For example, I can remember teaching, and I still teach. When I was a director, I still taught. I can remember having one particular boy that couldn't sit. So he stood, and we got him a high table, and they work standing up. Allows them to fidget. That's a very good comment. Someone says, unfortunately, there isn't enough time to accommodate each student's type, which I understand and agree, but knowing what it is can often break a barrier when a child is really stuck or they're becoming disruptive for whatever reason. It would make a good professional development session with your teachers if they actually understand how they learn best and to share with each other how you actually learn. Okay, so that's the student piece. Again, I find the data just interesting. So when I walk into classrooms in different schools, I'm just looking for what are the kids doing, how they're learning, what is actually happening, the dynamic. And then, of course, the next bit is the teacher-focused piece. Those last two slides actually are what we've just done. So teachers will never go away. In the last 5-10 years, there has been a lot of discussion about, we don't need teachers anymore. We can all do online learning. If anything over the last 2 months has shown us is the social relationship, the emotional relationship between the teacher and the student is absolutely paramount. So I'm working with quite a few schools at the moment on this, and this seems to be a common theme. Yes, the kids can do the work through online platforms, but they miss the social interaction. So I'm firmly of the belief that there is always a need for teachers. Our role might change, but it will still be there. And I think the important thing there is our role will change, and how quickly we are able to adapt will have a huge impact, I think, on how students learn. There's a lot of discussion out there in the world about, future learning, what the kids actually need. What they do need is someone that can mentor them, connect with them, and develop a relationship with them, because that emotional connection is one of the keys for any child to learn. And God bless Facebook and the internet, but you can't have a relationship with a screen. So, in terms of teacher focus, the actions, what percentage of your classroom time do you think is teacher directed? In other words, you basically controlling the delivery of information. This is just rough, and all of these are roughly these sorts of questions. What percentage of your classroom time is teacher directed? This one. Looking at about 60%, which is interesting. Okay, the next one. What percentage of your classroom time do you think is spent actually mentoring individual students? Now, I'm sure you're all aware that some students take far more time than others. But roughly, over the course of the day, week, how much of your time do you think is mentoring individuals rather than groups, rather than teacher directed? Okay, this is good. Keep this coming. What percentage of your classroom time is spent disciplining the students? Wow, this is low. This is good. Romanian is fine. My Romanian is excellent, as you can imagine. Okay. So the next question. What percentage roughly of your time is spent introducing a particular topic? Okay. So what percentage of your classroom time is spent summarizing the day's lesson? So you've had your lesson, you've introduced a topic, the kids have worked on that. How much time do you spend summarizing what has actually happened, or what you hope would have happened, or what you think has happened in the lesson? Okay. Now, the next question, the last question in this section, how long into the lesson does the teaching start? is a bit of a loaded question, because there's a lot of research out there of how long should lessons be, because if the transition time from the last class to the next class, there's a physical transition, students going from one room to another room, but there's a mental transition too. So often when I go into schools, I'm looking how long is the actual lesson, because if it takes 5 to 10 minutes for the lesson to actually start, kids to come in, settle down, and at the end to complete and move to the next, if your lessons are very short, you actually waste a lot of time during the day. So how long do you think it takes for your kids, once they come into the door, to actually refocus? Everybody needs to refocus. I'm sure you're the same when you go into a meeting. You sit down, you get out your stuff, you get your head into the space, you'll have a chat, you do stuff. And then when everything is ready, you launch into the lesson. How long does that take you, do you think? And it depends on your student's mood, as someone's read. If they've just come out of PE, God bless PE classes, it's more difficult. You know, after lunch, it's more difficult. You tried teaching on a Friday afternoon last lesson. Monday morning, different too. Okay. So that's more or less at the end of the first section. Why I think this is important is I quite understand that teaching is an art, but it is also a science. And how you construct your day with the students and the actions you take, even though it can often be spontaneous and you have to adapt to what the students are doing, there's a structure there. It's often too easy to be teacher directed because you get involved in what you're teaching. So I challenge you, if you don't already do it, okay, what in your mind does a perfect, whatever that might mean, lesson look like? And different types of lessons have different weightings on all of these topics. So I think you have to be very deliberate. And I will ask teachers when I go into their classroom, okay, how long did you plan to teach them a particular topic? How long did you allow them to settle down at the beginning? How long do you think you should be mentoring in this particular piece that you're doing? But it adds clarity, I think, to what you actually do within your classroom. Again, it's trying to look at your particular box. I often encourage other teachers to visit other teachers, because an external peer critique is usually very powerful. For someone like me to come into your schools can be a bit of a challenge, because who am I to come in and tell you what to do? Whereas your peers who understand the environment of your particular school tend to have a much more powerful voice. So I'm a great believer in teachers going into other teaching spaces. So I'd like to challenge you now, and again, also at the end of this webinar, certain things you should be doing if you want to understand what you are doing. Try and not only reflect on what you're doing, but to get others to see it as they see it in the classroom. It's not very comfortable often for teachers to visit other teachers, so choose someone you can trust. It's amazing what they can come up with, which you just haven't thought of. Okay, the next section, time to teach. Who is deciding the time? This is obviously a picture of a very rudimentary classroom. And the reason I show this picture, I've seen some wonderful teaching happen in extraordinarily poor circumstances, and the opposite, some very poor teaching in some fantastic facilities. What makes the difference is you, the teacher. You have a huge impact on how not only you construct your lessons, but how you engage with your kids. Yes, resources are hugely important, but if I had to choose between a teacher and an excellently resourced school. Give me a great teacher every day of the week because they know how to connect with kids and they know how to do their particular profession. But this is about time. I know a lot of you have 9 classes a day. You know, how long should the lessons be? How long should the day be? Those sort of questions, I think we have to start critiquing, particularly now, where we've gone from 0 classroom time to 100% online time. Is there somewhere in the middle where we need to have a look at? So, a few comments. Who's actually controlling the time of the learning process? The power of the technology has been amazing to give independence to our kids. And there's a lot of online programs which are just wonderful. But how independent or dependent are the students to you in the learning process? Likewise, how long can students actually concentrate? If you look at a lot of the theory, they say, okay, 20, 25 minutes. Well, I've seen kids concentrate for at least 2 hours if there's a particular topic or project they're really honed in on. How long should lessons be? There's a whole science around how long a lesson should be. What is the optimal length to teach a topic, to practice the topic, to get the kids engaged, to understand what's actually happened, to remediate any lost understanding, and to bring the conclusion to the lesson. You try doing that in 35 minutes, it's not easy. How long should the school day be? There's a lot of research to say the older kids don't really function till 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, whereas for the younger one, it's the opposite. Do we have staggered school days? Sometimes that's simply not practical, but we have to consider it. And, you know, should we be at school every day? But the kids should be in school every day. Should we perhaps be having a 4-day week and on the 5th day do something totally different? So the questions I'm asking you now, what do you think? What percentage of your students' learning time is spent listening to you, the teacher? Sometimes I go into classrooms and I'm sitting, and the only voice I hear is the teacher. Again, that can be fine in certain circumstances, but in others, it can be as boring as sin. That can be during a lesson or during a week, just roughly. Again, it's a feel, because some lessons, you know, the majority of time might actually be, you know, they have to listen to what's going on. And at others, it might be 0, but just give me a sense of the average. How often are they listening to you? Okay. So the next one, what percentage of the time do you think the students are actually off task? You usually know. It's easy to ignore, but you know when they're not. So roughly in that lesson, again, this is general, how often do you think the students switch off? You know, look out the window. We all need to have a mental break. I know when I visited some Chinese schools, the teachers built in go to sleep time, close your eyes time, look out the window time, just to decompress. We all do it. We get up and have a cup of coffee, or we go to stretch, or we do something else. look sideways, have a chat. Give me a sense of how often you think your kids are off task. And if they are, which they will be, by the way, how do you accommodate that in the learning patterns? Yeah, yeah. Kindergartners tend to be engaged. Nice one. See a cat on the roof and comment on it. Wonderful. Okay, now this is an interesting one for me because I really got no idea how much of the learning time, in other words, kids are learning in a classical sense, in other words, school-directed learning, rather than they are, learning to be a ballerina or they're learning to do something else outside school. How much time do you think is spent at school as opposed to home? So it might be 60%, 40% at home. Some of the older kids, it might be more time spent at home. With kindergartens, it might be, okay, just need to have the parents read to them or be read to. So give me a sense, and I think you need to qualify it perhaps with age of the children that you teach. How much learning time is directed, do you think, school directed as opposed to home directed? And the after school programs. Yeah. Of course, now it's 0 time at school and 100% at home. Not that I would encourage that. Someone has mentioned space. Yeah, I get it. Okay, next one. The internet is everywhere. There's some amazing online programs which can be used to reinforce skills, etc. How much time do you reckon your students spend either at home or school on the internet as a learning tool? Learning tool, I mean a specific program which is teaching specific skills, math, language, grammar. How much time is spent with those? Yeah, at home as well. Because you might say, okay, here's a particular program. We're not going to spend time at school. At home, I expect you to spend 30 minutes doing online math counts program, which is online math skills based. Not too much, 10%. Łatwiej puțin. And then for C5, you use the internet as a research tool. In other words, tell the kids, okay, we're going to research the Dacians, go online, home or school, and use the internet to do your research. So research means find out about the content of a particular topic rather than you as the teacher delivering that content. Okay, and the last one. How often do you think your kids spend time chatting in class to their peers? In other words, how much of a social experience is it rather than academic experience? Too much. There's nothing wrong with chatting, by the way. It can relieve a bit of tension. 10 seconds, chat, finish, back on task again. If you're doing some professional development with teachers, they are never quiet. Someone always is chatting to someone else. And that can be a positive too. It's not necessarily negative. It's normal to chat. Yeah, absolutely. We're social creatures. You can mute them now. That's the difference. Absolutely. As you can mute me now, of course. Okay. Thank you. I'm a great believer in how we look at time, as you probably gathered. So to give you a sense of what I look for, and it doesn't matter what sort of school I go into, and I've worked at a lot of different types of schools. These 4 topic areas are what I concentrate on. What's the teacher doing? What's the student doing? How are they using time? Because time, of course, is precious. And how you construct the time, I would suggest you have a lot of discussion as teachers. Okay, how are we going to actually use time in our school and outside of school to benefit the kids? And if I were to ask you to do one thing on time, that is, how long should your lessons be? What is the most productive way of using that particular time? Because the majority of time at school is spent in your classroom. What should that look like? Again, that will vary from kindergarten all the way up through to grade 12. But think about time and how you break up time, because we do it very traditionally without critiquing it. But again, there's a lot of research out there to suggest, depending on the age, how time can be productive for you. Okay, now, I think this is a topic, the last topic, where a lot of people forget about place. Wherever it might be, at school, at home, or elsewhere, and the importance of how we surround ourselves in a school has a huge impact on how we learn. For example, how much light you get into your classroom helps learning. What you paint on the walls, what you put in the classrooms. There was a phase in the United States of building schools with virtually no windows because they didn't want the students to look out of the windows. Tragic mistake in terms of school planning and design because it doesn't let in light. Secondary light is not good for primary light. So how you use space, the dynamic of the space is quite critical. Sound as well. How well is the room soundproof? So as we look at space, and when I get asked to design schools, there's a number of things that have to come into play. I'll give you an example. If you want teachers to meet, the first thing I do when I go into a school as director, I find where are the coffee machines? Who's making the coffee? Where are they? First, it's got to be good coffee. Sorry if you're a tea drinker. Where is the coffee? And if the coffee's not in there and it can be quickly delivered and good quality, you're going to have a problem because the coffee place is the drinking hole. If you want to talk about how society is structured, it's where everybody comes and chats. And that chatting is very important. You put coffee and biscuits and food together, you're going to have 100 teachers in there. So you go to where that is. So these sort of things become very important in the social life of a school. And I come back again to the topic, If the kids don't feel safe and happy and socialize at school, the learning is not going to be as productive. Small groups, okay, it's what we call the campfire. You know, you're sitting around, you're having a chat. So we're in the school, which comes down to the sort of first question. But before we come to those, because I have them in, I'm going to show you some pictures. Probably all the topics I've spent in the last 5 years, particularly in Bucharest, is looking at different schools and how they use space. And particularly, I try to go to the internet hubs in a city. So how are young adults working these days? So a lot of entrepreneurs, and I know they're in Bucharest too, because I've been to some, develop spaces which are essentially learning workspaces. And I think schools need to start thinking about, okay, how is the workplace changing in how it uses space? I can guarantee after the coronavirus, where people find themselves to work is going to radically change. If it's a lot of home-based work, which I think it might do, well, how are these people going to socialize? You cannot sit at home on your own. It's soul destroying. So where does the social piece come in? These hubs, and I visited a lot around Western Europe. Okay, how are they going to survive? So a lot of schools still look like this, more relaxed, the tables together. I think if you're still putting your desks in rows, I would suggest experiment. It's just not necessary these days. And you look around this classroom, you can see who's engaged and who's not engaged, but a lot of light and color, usually neutral on the wall, and then color comes from the students' work that you put up on the wall. There is time and space for this, for particular classes, but it's rapidly disappearing because it's not necessary. These cost a lot of money, but a building is a building. But these more open dynamic spaces are becoming more important. Lower tables, higher tables, grouped tables, more structured areas. And if you start going to schools which are thinking about space, how it's designed and how it's designed for learning is quite critical. Casual space, the coffee piece. It's quite amazing. When I go to schools that are starting to do this, and I did it in Bucharest for the older kids, created a coffee room, a bit like a Starbucks, which had full internet. The kids would come and work. It was not such a risk taker that I had 4 closed walls. They were in a glass box outside, a huge one, but I could see in because, you know, with 17, 18-year-olds, you've just got to be a bit careful if they're out of sight and out of mind. But they had great coffee and tea and food, and they could sit and chat but work. And kids do this. We do it. And it's like a coffee shop. Again, probably the second thing I do when I go to a school, first one is, where's the teacher's coffee? The second one is, if I can, where are the kids' coffee? Or thirdly, and importantly, where are the parents' coffee? Where can the parents come and sit down? And this is at any age group, by the way, particularly for the younger kids in kindergarten. If you can provide coffee for the parents in the morning, allow them to come in, particularly into the library, sit down, read a book, have a coffee with a kid, disappear. You're starting off the day in a much more relaxed place. And the schools look like this. If you have a chance to go to the American school in Bucharest, we're starting to do stuff like this. At colleges, and someone's put here in Belgium, in the university, it is like this now. It's an understanding of social plus academic is actually symbiotic. They're not different things. No chairs. Boys in particular like to move, they fidget. Well, allow them to fidget. You can actually buy chairs these days, which are actually they rock slightly, or you have these soft ones that they can sit on, different shapes, different sizes. It becomes more relaxed and yet still disciplined in the traditional sense. Again, she's got a lot of windows here. But for this exercise, she's not using it. They're gathered around. It's formal but informal. Now this is a bit of a shock to the eye because it's too bland, but if this were a classroom in a school that I was working at, there'd be a million stuff with the kids' stuff on the wall, but it's very simple. The decoration comes from the kids, not from the paintwork. But a lot of light. I love plants. Simple. I often encourage everybody in every classroom should have a sofa with cushions. Also, we experiment and load. Here, the tables are standard height, it looks to me. But I guarantee if you can get a high table, IKEA, they have IKEA where you are, have high tables, you'll be amazed at the difference in the learning that takes place. When we've introduced them into some of my schools, it's quite often, as I said in one of the slides, the kids will actually sit under the table to work. Some will stand at the table to work. Kids will just do things differently. And they will do it unexpectedly. When we brought the high tables, the idea was to have students standing because it's nice to stand. But I was not expecting the kids to prefer to sit under it. And if you look at ancient history, this is the cave mentality. Isolate yourself, huddle down with a friend or two, work there. And this is it. We redesigned the library in Bucharest, and we had a stairwell like this. And we watched the space to see what the kids did. The most favorite place in the library was under the staircase. So we put cushions underneath the staircase, and kids would sit there with their laptops or read a book. And as you can see here, each child is sitting probably a bit differently. But they're still doing their work. You can just see that something is happening. So this is the last slide. So start thinking about place. So the first question is, how much of the school day in your school are the kids in a classic classroom? What percentage? I'm not surprised with these numbers. A lot of schools, the kids spend a lot of time in the classroom, which is not a bad thing, by the way. Some classrooms are beautiful and they're really nice spaces. But they can be super boring unless you're careful. It is amazing the transformation on student learning if there's a space that they can walk in which feels comfortable. And you as a teacher have a lot of control over that, I believe. So for P2, okay, classroom is one thing, another learning space. And what I mean by that is the library, the PE, gym, designed for learning, but not the classic classroom. What percentage? One to 2%, yeah. A lot of comments on this. Wow. Which brings on to P3, which to me is often the interesting one. How much time is spent on the school grounds, not in a learning space or a classroom? A lot of schools don't have social spaces because they weren't designed to have social spaces. It's interesting to know, you as teachers, do you have social spaces? So for the next question, this is about, okay, you are the teacher. How much of the time is in a non-structured working space? What I mean by that is, outside in the hallway, I believe hallways to me are huge under-resourced space, but not just for traffic, as long as they're obviously wide enough for health and safety, and I know there's regulations. Are they allowed to sit under the stairs, go outside? In other words, what percentage of the students' school time, your time, is in non-structured spaces? During breaks, yeah. It takes a lot of courage to get your kids to learn in non-structured spaces, because I can imagine a lot of directors wouldn't allow you to do it. You know, what are these students doing outside in the corridor? They should be in your classroom. What are they doing out under the tree? They should be in your classroom. And then the last question, what percentage of the school's time sitting in seats other than classroom chairs? Sofas, cushions, benches, floor, you name it, on the stairs. How often do you reckon they do that, or they're allowed to do that? Kids love to sit in these spaces which are just a bit different, as we do. Okay. Well, no such things. What you're doing with furniture is breaking the stereotype how kids learn. So this is the last slide, and obviously we now have about 15 minutes or so for questions. That's part of the deal. What I'm trying to do is, somewhere in these questions, and there's about 20, 25 questions, something in there hopefully might resonate for you to do or to change things. Change in schools comes slowly. You're not going to do all of these things at once. I wish you could, but pick something where you're going to do something different, just one thing different, to see what happens. And it doesn't have to be revolutionary. It can be something quite simple, but it has to be, and it will be, because that's what defines it. It's something to do with who does what, you or the student. It'll be something to do with time and how you use it, and it'll be something to do with place, because those are the three main dynamics of what happens in a school. It's got nothing to do with what you're teaching, nothing. It is absolutely to do with how you are teaching. So thank you. If there are questions, it'd be nice to see you, but I obviously understand a lot of you don't have video access. So what's the best way of doing this?
Some of them, Robert, have video access, and if you change your preview mode, you can see them down there.
Okay, yeah. Okay, cool.
And they can activate their microphone and ask questions, or they can send them on the chat or Q&A section.
Perfect. So I always say to my teachers, ask me absolutely anything you like. I will guarantee I will answer.
So please, don't be shy.
I'm sure.
Ask the question. I will try to see if there are any questions in the Q&A section.
Okay.
There is a question here. What subject do you teach?
I was trained to teach math, physics, biology, but I tried and teach absolutely everything. So history, geography, geology, chemistry, physics, biology, mathematics, English. I took a Russian lesson once. That was interesting. That's when that was definitely student-led, because I knew some Russian. This was in Tashkent. I taught PE. What haven't I taught? I haven't taught Romanian, of course. I taught Spanish for a bit in South America. It doesn't really bother me what I teach. Also, when you get to the higher levels, I don't have the expertise. It's just fun to engage kids in something different. I loved teaching history. But yeah, if I taught, and I always taught as a director. So for 40 years, I taught mathematics. I felt probably more comfortable that I could walk into a classroom having done absolutely no preparation for it, which of course sounds disgusting, but I knew I could do it, because sometimes as a director, you don't have too much control over your time. So because I knew it backwards, I knew I could walk in and pretend to teach.
There is another question here. How do you think learning will change after this period?
I think a lot. I think nothing will happen in the short term unless the coronavirus dictates that we have to do a different sort of teaching. In other words, sometime we'll be at home and sometime we'll be at school, simply to get the social distancing within the school. So you'll have a sort of composite model, which will be really difficult on teachers, because they'll be trying to run classes in a traditional sense and then online classes. I think people now understand the limitations of the internet and the importance of the teacher. How will it affect? I'm not too sure. But I think the whole concept which was very much out there, that, we don't really need teachers, we can learn online, that's dead. It's dead. Unless you have to. How can we change? Yeah. Gabby, did you want to ask?
How can we change if our leaders are obsolete to the new direction?
Oh, remember, you're a rebel. So pick one thing, absolutely. Pick one thing which your leader can't really say no to, but will just shift power balance. When I was asked at one of the conferences, the SuperTeach, I can't remember which one, might have been Bucharest, the teacher asked me exactly this question. And I said, open your doors to your classroom. It's amazing the impact it has on the kids. They're much better behaved, by the way. But it's also saying the outside world can come into my classroom. Would be very surprised if one of your leaders said, please close your door. And you say, well, I like to keep it open to get fresh air. You can make an excuse. Do something which demonstrates that you are the boss of your classroom, not your leader. In your classroom, you're the boss. They might like to think they're the boss. They're not the boss. Choose one thing. Now, if your boss locks her door and never walks on the hallway, excellent. That means that's even more control to you.
There is a remark here in Romanian which says that we are so much different from what you presented today that we need a lot of time to digest, analyze, and reflect.
Yeah, so it's easy for me because I've been thinking about this for 10, 15, 20 years. All I do know is that change happens slowly. Those small steps empowers you as the teacher and empowers the students as well. So think about that long list. Don't do everything, but do one thing differently when your kids come back to school. Just one thing. And share it with your other teachers. What are they going to do differently? Life's too boring to do the same stuff every day.
There is another question. Okay.
Sorry. Hi, Robert. This is Alina.
Hi, Alina.
Yeah, I'm a teacher. I qualified in Romania, but now I'm teaching in UK.
Oh, okay. Beautiful weather you got there.
In Worcester. I'm located in Worcester.
I know Worcester.
Okay. So I would like to ask you, how do you see the educational system in Romania? What do you think you can do? Not you, but us. What do you think the Romanian teacher, the government, and everybody we can do in order to improve our educational system? You've got some experience in Romania, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say you're the Department for Education secretary. Do you think we should do as Romanian in order to transform our educational system at a 21st century standards?
Thanks, Alina. The first thing I would change is, particularly in secondary school, is the nonsense of so many different subjects and no clarity on the curriculum.
Yeah.
Dickensian 40, 50-year-old curriculum. So modernize the curriculum. You cannot teach dozens of subjects or parts of subjects. Just can't do it. It's impossible. So simplifying the content of what is supposed to be taught is critical. And Romania could do the decision tomorrow. The Americans, the British, in England, the Australians, the New Zealanders, they all have curriculum, which they've spent, Canadians, years and years and years developing. Bring it in. Content is not so important as long as it's reasonably what you need to teach. How you're teaching it is the trick. So yes, our content will change over time, but in Romania, change your content.
How can you facilitate teachers in Romania to make them understand that it's not about the content, it's about how you're doing? Because it's that kind of, I wouldn't say indoctrination, but everything is focused on the subjects. Specialists, mathematicians, we are very good, but at the end of the day, how much we teach. So it's not about what we know, it's about how we're doing. So how do we change that mentality? This is the toughest aspect of education.
It is. For a birthday present about 4 years ago, someone gave me a Romanian math book, which it doesn't matter what language a math book is, you understand it. And I read it and I'm thinking, holy smoke, this is crazy stuff. You know, it's what most people would do at university. It was boring, it was repetitive, and it had no purpose whatsoever. The majority of what I was reading in the book. Wonderful as a tool for a kid that, you know, 1 in 1,000 kids that likes that stuff, you know, doing differential equations or some crazy pieces of algebra. You've got to
teach
change
maths.
that. Oh, you teach maths, well, then
Sorry.
you know what Romanian maths is like.
Teach P and maths as well. I qualify to teach. Yeah, but I'm playing with maths, with the maths that I've learned in Romania, but they absolutely forced us. It was a nightmare to learn that kind of maths, that kind of, it was so hard, mathematics analyzed that we've learned in high school in Romania, and now I'm just playing. But it's not about this. It's not about this in education. I don't want to be a mathematician. I just to be a math teacher. How do you convince the government? How do you convince the whole teachers in Romania that it's not about being a physician, a mathematician? It's not about being the specialist of specialists. It's about to know how to deal, how to enjoy to make the kids enjoy, how to have that connection, how to have that communication. It's about learning outcomes. It's about educational outcomes. We're not discussing about educational outcomes in Romania. We're just discussing about subjects. How do we change that mentality?
Well, you'll have to ask Felix and Dragos and Christina Gheorghe to point me in the right direction, and I'll speak to these people. It's not rocket science, and it's not difficult. It's a mindset change. And it will come to Romania at some point. It just needs the political will to do it.
Yeah, but education is geopolitical. They don't want in that part of the Europe to be. We're just doers. We're not thinkers. They're thinkers in other part of Europe. So education is geopolitical. They can change education, but it's no interest to change education because it's very, very easy to keep people in dark. This is what that's happening in that part of the Europe, not only in Romania. So,
well, get people to vote.
Right, sorry, I keep it long.
No, it's okay. It's tricky, and I can't make that mathematics one, but I'll speak to anybody. Thank you, Alina. Enjoy Worcester and the sunny day.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Robert. Keep in touch.
Thank you. And there was a comment from Patru, Sylvia. So there must be Sylvia Patru. Math is what the majority of pupils hate. That's exactly why I decided to teach mathematics. Why do they hate it? It has actually nothing to do with mathematics. They hate it because they don't understand it. They simply lost out, probably in the 5th, 6th, or 7th grade. They didn't understand it. And because math is so sequential and has to be what we call scaffolded, built, if you miss pieces of it, the building collapses and you're going to hate it. You suffer.
I think that's what it's missing in Romanian system, the practical part. Why do you have to learn math? Why do you have to learn physics? What is good for you to know all these things? And after you find out about these things, you should go further and be a mathematician or a physician. And that might be a problem with the teachers, not a problem, but a situation with the teachers too, because there are some teachers who are there because they love kids and they love to teach. And there are some teachers who are in the school because they love math or physics or biology, and they want to pass their knowledge to the kids. And
I think the second suggestion I would make is that the importance of the Olympiads, like the math Olympiads, should disappear. Okay, for some kids they're great fun and they're good, but they really have nothing to do with education. You agree?
Florina is very happy.
They're crazy. Every school does something similar, but they're Okay, kids do an Olympiad. Great, good, celebrate, well done, but it's not the driving force.
There is another question here from Anka. Do you have any tricks on how we can motivate our pupils, our kids to attend the online lessons?
Depends which ones they are. Some are boring. The ones which are very interactive. And you've got to use, I mean, for language acquisition, they're great because they're very intuitive with the student. The math ones, the kids really enjoy. So I think for some of the core stuff, geography has fantastic online software to use. And if kids love to do it, they will do it again and again. So I would, get some money together, have a look, say, at mathematics, because kids hate that, and find some good online programs, of which there are many, and engage the kids. And if somehow they can do it at home, because I wouldn't particularly want to do it at school, it will drive itself. Kids can get hooked on it.
Yeah, but we have to learn it, and it's not that easy for us.
No, but to your point, we have to learn some basic math because we need it. So sometimes you have to be practical and pragmatic, fine. But the key is to make sure the kids don't hate it.
Yeah, there is a comment here about the Olympiads that teachers are somewhat forced to participate for diplomas and top assessment score at the end of the school year.
Yeah. No, I understand. Well, I mean, teachers have a sort of option. If they can go to a school which is not a state school, you might not get as paid as much, because I know the salaries have increased in the public sector, but a chance where you're actually allowed to teach, and there's increasing number of schools like that, do it. But yeah.
So everything is up to us, right? We have to change things one by one.
Yes.
We have to try and see what's happening.
Yeah. But in the SuperTeach conferences, thousands of people go. There's an energy there for change. The teachers, the majority of them, 95%, want to change. So change something small. Start to take control. Remember, in the classroom, you're the boss.
Yeah. If there are no more questions here, I would like to thank you very much, Robert, for this intervention today. I think that it was very interesting. I had a lot of questions about sharing your presentation, because the questions are there to stay. We have to ask these questions from time to time and find the answers and see if we are okay with the answer or if we can change something.
Yeah, exactly. It's been my pleasure as always. I was not a born teacher. I am not a born teacher. I just love to teach.
And we can see this from every intervention you have in SuperTeach conferences, and you have a lot of nice questions for the future. What is your next question? It's about time, and just to prepare ourselves for the next 6 months.
Exactly. I'll think of something else to provoke you. Don't worry.
Okay.
So say goodbye from lockdown Italy, and look after yourselves and be the rebel.
Yeah, will be. Thank you very much for everything.
Bye-bye there.
Bye. Mulțumim tuturor, seară frumoasă să aveți!